Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, I am Ray. I'm an alcoholic.
Ray.
And it was odd because I found out I was called Florida Ray. And I've been fortunate enough, by grace, to speak around the country a little bit. And everyone usually calls me Firefighter Ray, so this is unique. And I hope to become Tennessee Ray in the future. But anyways, I am Ray. I'm an alcoholic. And by grace of God that I was afraid to believe in, strong sponsorship and working at 12 Steps Alcoholics Anonymous directly the way the big book says. My sobriety date's June 19th of 1996, and for that I am eternally grateful. A little nervous tonight because this is one of my oldest friends, and I don't know, maybe that means I'm going to tell the truth. We are alcoholics. Is there anyone new here? I always like to ask that. Anyone under a year?
Under a year?
Yeah. Anyone under 30, 60, 90 days?
60 in Colorado.
Good for you. I'm glad you're here, sincerely. I think sometimes, as old-timers, we get convenient and used to being in AA, we sit in our little pockets. And I got sober because I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous after relapsing, because two guys walked over to me when I was ashamed and asked me if I wanted coffee. And they sat with me. So welcome. What really got me when I was new was someone said to me what I'm going to tell you guys, that you never have to feel the way you feel right now again if you don't want to. And that sold me, because for the longest time I walked around with a big ego, thinking I was invincible, nothing hurt me. And the big secret of most of my life was that I was broken, I couldn't be fixed, and I couldn't tell anybody. And I come from an Irish Catholic family that came off the boat from Ireland to New York. That doesn't make me alcoholic. It just made me really thirsty and guilty from the start. And I came from a line of 3 NYPD, a firefighter, FDNY, and an FBI guy. And I was told, honestly, from the time I was this big, as long as I don't drink anything, or snore anything, smoke anything, or stick anything in my arm, and I drink and I fist fight and I take care of my family, I'm a man. And that's what I did. I don't have a lot of drugs or anything in my story, not that I didn't do those things, but that's how I was raised. And, man, I'm really glad you guys are here, under that new, being new, sincerely. AA is the only place that you can have two lives in the same life, sincerely. And they're on the opposite side of the room, right? You look back, I can look back at what I was like now, back then. I look now and I don't know how I got here, except following directions. And there's a line in the big book that talks about that. I know a lot of people in AA said, oh, they're suggestions. Well, let me tell you, they're the only suggestions we have for you to get better. AA doesn't offer you anything else. That's it. And in the book, it actually says, further on ahead is some clear-cut directions on how we recovered. And when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I can't really tell you what my first drink was, right? And it's really irrelevant. You know, what it means is I can tell you what it did for me. And if alcohol doesn't do something for you, it can't do anything to you, right? And what I mean by that is it had the instant ability to change how I felt and what I thought. Right? Instantly, all probably have heard it and felt the same way. All of a sudden you're 6'4", good looking, you're invincible, all the stuff that goes with that. And I spent a lot of time chasing that feeling. And honestly, if I really got honest with myself, that was the first time. After that, yeah, I can lie and bullshit. I had some good times, but after that, really, I just drank because I needed the effect produced by alcohol. All I can tell you is from the very first time I drank, anytime I drank, I always had the feeling that I needed another one. And I'm talking about being blacked out, thrown up, waking up and feeling that I needed another one. And I always drank with a sense of urgency, right? I couldn't get drunk fast enough. And, I'm trying to think of my first real drunk that I remember paying any consequences for. Because when I drank when I was younger, everyone thought it was cute. In an Irish family, there's always a communion, there's always something going on. Everyone's drinking, has a good time. My best friend's father would always say, hey, Kilmer, you want a drink? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, good, get mine when you're getting, And it's just how it was. He had a refrigerator out back. And I grew up kind of poor. And what they did is they didn't have a keginator. They didn't have money. They had a refrigerator. They drilled a hole through it and put a tap in it. And if you didn't stand on the rubber mat at the right time, you get electrocuted. And I got electrocuted a lot. And you think that wouldn't happen. At one time it was snowing and icy, and I got electrocuted, and I fell and I knocked out a tooth, and blood was everywhere. And the first thing I did was, in the morning, he goes, which one of you guys were back there drinking? Like, none of us were back there touching that stuff. So he grabbed me and took me back there and showed me my tooth and the blood. And I got caught in my lie right away. And then I think the first time, it was really odd. My mom, since I can remember, always told me I was going to be an alcoholic. And I didn't understand that because I come from a long line. I'm in a family, and she was not a drinker. She has a lot of other issues from alcoholism because it is a family illness. We affect a lot of people around us. And I never understood it, you know. And when I was young, because she got divorced a couple of times. She's been married 4 times. She's been divorced all of those times. And she sent me a lot of counselors, a lot of shrinks, a lot of people. You know, alcoholics aren't dumb. You know, if they ask you if you feel suicidal, I don't go, yeah. You know, I know what they do when they do that. They lock you up. They bankrupt you. They're not dumb. And I never told those people anything. And I still don't know why she was sending them to me way back then. But me and my cousins would always drink, and my mom would come. We'd hide our booze. And then as soon as she walked away, we started drinking again. But she was always on me. And it's odd that I always thought my mom didn't know who I was. And I went to war with her really young. And the thing was, she was right about a lot of me. She knew a lot. And one of the first times I was hanging out with a bunch of kids, and this was young, I don't know if I was 9, 10. And I started off high class right away. They stole a bunch of Mad Dog 2020. And they were having relay races, and I drank till everyone was passed out. And I'm still looking around like, this is it, right? I wanted to keep going. And so I always knew to stay at other people's houses because my mom was very strict. And so I called and said, hey, I'm going to spend the night there. I mean, it was the first time she said, yeah, that's fine, but come home first. She must have heard something in my voice. And I remember going home and walking in, and she just started screaming, having a panic attack, going, oh my God, what's he on? What's he on? Like, she's freaking out. And she called my uncle, and we lived in a little country town in Florida, and he came and picked me up, and he put me in his car, and we went on a ride. And he saw fit to go down every dirt road with every pothole there was and make sure he got them all. And when we got back to the house, I started spinning. Everything was spinning. I was getting ready to puke right there on the floor. And all I remember is he picked me up by my belt and took me outside, and he said, real men don't puke on people's houses' floor. And he threw me into the toilet, right? And I got so good at friggin' drinking and throwing up, I wouldn't even hit my own shoes. That's what I thought I'd do, as long as I kept doing that stuff. And I was a really good athlete. That's what kept me out of a lot of trouble being young. I had some scholarship opportunities. And then I drank all through high school. I was a kid, and you know what's funny? It's not funny, but I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and my sponsor had to tell me that I stole from my mother. I didn't think it was stealing. She worked 3 jobs as a single mom to get me lunch money. And I would save that lunch money and give it to older guys to buy me booze. And I would keep it. I'd drink beer warm in my locker at school, under my bed, because I needed that effect. I don't know if I wouldn't have been a suicide when I was young if I didn't have alcohol. And I'd go into a purse and take those things, and I thought it was my right, you know. And my sponsor goes, you know, you stole from your mother. I had to come to Alcoholics Anonymous to learn that. That's pretty pathetic. And I always thought I was a man, and I look back, and luckily for strong sponsorship, I didn't get sugar-coated. He told me the truth, and I was one of those guys that needed it. He said, real men don't lie and hurt to their mothers and hurt their kids and do the things that I was doing. And I don't say that to... That's just me. I had to swallow those chunks of truth about myself. But luckily in this Alcoholics Anonymous, you get that opportunity, that second life to completely change and make all that stuff right. So I did a lot of drinking. I'm going to skip a lot. And, you know, like I said, sports kept me out of a lot of trouble. But if you're new, the best thing I could give you as advice is to suspend everything you think you know. Just get rid of it, sincerely. And the more you're wrong about, the better off your life's going to get. Because I thought for sure my life was over. I mean, I would do a survey right now and ask everyone in here to raise their hand when they got to AA if they thought their life was over. Right? You come into AA and people are not drinking and they're happy. What the fuck's wrong with you people, right? You're not drinking and having fun? I just couldn't compute it. And I was 23 years old when I got sober. So I thought life was over completely. And so luckily I was wrong about that stuff. And today I'm wrong about a lot, and my life still gets better because I'm wrong. Because my head always goes right to the negative and all that first. I'm just one of those guys. Anyways, alcoholism will rob you of everything that's the most important thing in your life. I mean, the very thing you love the most. It didn't really rob me. I gave it away. I learned that in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I love sports. I had chances at scholarships and all these things, and the big book talks about getting tight at the wrong time. Well, when I was a senior and I had all these opportunities, I got tight at some of the wrong times. I got kicked out of my home, didn't have a place to go, and I just quit school. Just quit. I don't need that school or whatever. And luckily there was a guy I worked for in a restaurant, and he was an alcoholic, and they let me live with him, but he made me go to school. He took me to school every day. I only had 6 months left to graduate, and he wouldn't let me not graduate. But I screwed all that stuff up. And I worked, and a good thing was I always thought, man, I can't wait to be free of all these people and these rules and all this nonsense. I lived with him. I could drink, do what I want, and all that stuff. And I found out I was never free, right? I was a slave to what I was doing, and alcohol. And I lost all that stuff. And then I copped what? Played a victim role for a long time, right? And if you're going to play victim role in AA, you probably won't get sober. You won't change your life. You know, and if you don't want to, if you want to stay a victim, don't get a sponsor. I just tell you right now, especially one that knows the big book. And so I kept drinking. I got in a little bit of trouble. I started working some construction jobs, and I vaguely remember this. I don't think I was even 21 years old yet. I went and tried out for some college sports, and I blew out my knee. And then at one point, I was drinking in a bar. My old high school coach was there. And he said, hey, the Houston Astros are having tryouts tomorrow. And it was in Kissimmee, Florida, near Orlando. They got a training camp there. And I was like, oh, really? And so I left the bar and got a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I went in front of those gates, and I stayed there until they opened. And I walked right out, and I made the team. I ain't touched a baseball in 5 years, right? But 2 weeks later, I'm supposed to show up and sign a 6-figure check, and I showed up drunk and late, and I lost everything. And you say, but it saved my life. That's the very things that saved my life. And what I did is felt sorry for myself some more. And I continued to drink. And I went, after a construction site job one day, we went to a place where my brother works in Orlando, Lake Mary. And I went to this bar. And I don't remember much. I remember having a couple drinks. I was sitting next to this lady. And I was the type of drinker who went to a bar and got drunk, or got a girl, or got in a fight. Right? That was always one of those three things. And my roommate was really small. These two roommates, and my brother was the manager of this place. And he went to the bathroom and came back, and I guess there were 3 guys down at the end of the bar, and they told him that it was time for me to leave, that they should take me out. And I stewed on that for a minute. Who are they to tell me, right? So I don't know what I did, but I know I went down and wanted to have a polite conversation with those guys. Next thing I know, I'm being arrested. I got blood coming out of my mouth. And I remember saying to the police officer, he says, do you want to go to jail? Because he thought I was the one that got physically assaulted. I was, but I kind of started it maybe. And I said, well, you know what? I'm sick of hearing you guys say this. Either take me to jail, or I said, shut up. Next thing I know, slam my head down in the car, and I'm like every other. I go, wait a minute, I was just kidding, right? And I go to jail. And well, first they took me to the hospital because I had concussion. I needed stitches and stuff. But I guess I did enough bad stuff to those police and pissed them off enough. I vaguely remember him saying to the nurse, he's not here for any help. Just want to make sure he doesn't have AIDS. He's not going to die this second. He's going to jail. And they took me straight to jail. I remember throwing up in there and coming to and being read my charges. And I was charged with felony of battery of a police officer and attempted murder on him. And I don't recollect that at all. I don't understand what he's saying. I don't have any clue. And I'm at the point in my life I don't want to call anybody anymore. You know, I was the guy who would promise all these things and then go home and all those people would have that look. And if you drank like I did, you know what that look is. And you feel ashamed and people are disgusted. They've had enough. And I didn't want to call anybody. There was no one really to call. And luckily there was a nice little lady there, and she goes, you need to call somebody. She goes, you're too young. This isn't a place for you. And I remember she called my mother. And I thought I was going to get right out. Well, she called my grandfather and my uncle, who I told you was retired NYPD, and they said, leave them in there, until arraignment. And so I go to arraignment, and I do all this stuff. And I come out, and I was a typical alcoholic, right? How many times do any of you guys in here swear you're never doing this again? right? And I'm telling you, the thing is, you could have put me on a lie detector, and I would have actually passed it, because I meant it when I said it. And 2 days later, I'm drunk. But at the time I said it, I meant it wholeheartedly with everything that I had. And so I spent like 4 or 5 days, so I get back in the couch, a place to sleep, and I know I got to go in front of a judge. And we're not done. I try to clean up a little bit. And I went out with the guys. I remember it was my 21st birthday. And he goes, Ray, you can just have one. I can be honest with you, I didn't think in those terms. I always drank to get drunk. And if you didn't like it, you're out of my life. I didn't care. But at that moment, I knew. I was like, who would want one drink anyways, right? I don't understand that. But I did. I had two, and I smoked some other stuff to get by. And I was like, wait, I can do this. I had two. By the end of that week, I was back to the exact same person I was, didn't miss a beat. And I go in front of the judge, and he gave me a little bit of a break. And over the next 2 weeks, then I was staying with my brother and them, and no one really wanted me in the house. Nobody. They were sick and tired of me. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. But you kind of get humble for a couple days, right? Not real humility. You can turn that around real quick, Well, if they didn't do this and that, I wouldn't have to drink. It was always some excuse. And I went in front of the judge, and they sealed my records. And over those 2 weeks, I had nightmares of flashes of things that happened. And I was like, wow, maybe that did happen. And it was coming together like piecemeal. And then people were telling me. And so I decided, because no one wanted me around anymore, that I needed to go to the military, right? I was always a good athlete. I was always in shape. And I just wanted to get away from everyone. So I go down to the Marines and I talk to a recruiter, and I'm not even done with all this court stuff or any of that stuff. And they put me through some tests, and I was always kind of physically gifted, and I tested for recon, like 1 out of 100,000 people make it. And I sat in front of that guy with my test scores and the recruiter, and he says, he's looking at my police record. I mean, this just happened. And he's like, looks like you like to drink. I didn't know what the answer was. I thought it was a test, right? He goes, well, he says, I tell you what. He says, you come in here, we're really going to show you how to drink. I was like, really? They encourage this. This is great. So now I'm thinking in my head, oh, I'm going to boot camp in 6 months. So what do? I'm a big shot, right? I go out and drink every day, party like crazy, tell everyone how I'm going to go off to be a hero, and there's, all these great things. I'm going to save all this money in boot camp and come out of there. And the big book's right. The night they take me to go to boot camp, I go to the MEP station, it's called. It's a hotel. It's supposed to be men with men, women with women in a hotel. Just my luck. I go to my room, I walk in, there's a girl, right? And she gave me a test right away. She goes, you want to go have a drink? I said, absolutely. And I went down to the bar downstairs, and I got tight, just like the book says, and I did a bunch of stuff that I had never done before, right? And now I'm getting up in the morning to go to this boot camp, and the fear is just killing me, because my grandfather retired, and he was in World War II and stuff, so before all that stuff, he was big on it. If you weren't a cop, a fireman, or a trade union, it was his idea, not mine. You're a scumbag, you better go do this. And he goes, don't louse it up. And now I'm afraid, because I'm getting pee tested, right? And again, I'll go back to Alcoholics Anonymous. My first thought was, man, that is not good to go there and get to boot camp and in your first week test positive and get a dishonorable discharge, right? We're not dumb. So what I did is what I usually do. I made something up and I argued with the guy, right? And then I stormed out like a child and blamed him for what I did. And there was no one to call. I didn't want to call anyone, because I just went around for 6 months bragging how my life's going to come together. And if nothing else, I'm going to be a hero. And I slept on a park bench outside of Winn-Dixie. It's a grocery store in Tampa for 2 weeks. And all I remember is, oh, don't get drunk in Florida and pass out. I was eaten alive by mosquitoes. And I was so drunk I couldn't even itch them. That's how bad it was. And I remember coming to, and I was on this little bench, and I looked up, and this is how I was always a judgment machine. I woke up, and there was a wino, a bum, sitting next to me. And I judged him as soon as I woke up. It's the first thing that went in my head. I said, what the hell is he doing in my space? Right? And you know what the guy did? He didn't say one word to me. He passed me his bottle. He knew exactly what I needed at that moment. And at that moment, my insides met my outside world. Right? And I didn't know what to do. And all I could do was cry. My mom always had this knack for finding me. She should be a detective. She could probably have found bin Laden in a week. But she had found me, and I honest to God didn't think my mom knew me. And she said that I should go to, first of all, she said, you should come to Naples, Florida. And I'm homeless, right? Basically, I don't want to tell people that. And I don't even think I am, but I am, right? Big Book talks about delusion. That's thinking about something that's not true, but you believe it to be true, right? It's psychotic wishful thinking is what it is. And I said, why the hell would I want to go to Naples, right? I got no place to go. And then she knew me. She said, you should come to Naples because there's more booze served here per capita than anywhere in the U.S. And then she told me there was 4 girls to every guy, right? And then she said the fishing was good. I said, well, come get me. My brother came up, got me in the middle of a blackout. I landed in Naples, and I don't know if you drank like me, but when I woke up, the 4 horsemen were on. I needed something in me fast because I'm irritable, restless, and discontent. My skin's crawling. I'm frantic. I don't know what to do, and I'm patient. And my mom didn't lie to me. She just tricked me. There was a lot of booze served there, and there was 4 girls to every guy, but they're all over 80, right? She didn't tell me. And to tell you how selfish and self-centered I was, I wake up. Well, I came to. I can't get my brother up. He's passed out, and my mom calls. And I answered, and for the first time in a long time, all I could do was bawl. I was just bawling. I couldn't even put 2 words together. And here I am, a big tough guy, right? I think I am in my mind. And I can't talk. And she goes, don't do anything. Stay right there. And I'm like, where am I going to go? I don't got a car. I got a bag of clothes, my name. I ain't even got $1. And my stepdad happened to work. He was second in charge of a place called the Willow. And I was so selfish and mean to that guy for many years that I didn't even know what he did for a living, right? And he said, why don't you come down here and to talk to somebody? And I had no idea about sobriety. I didn't want to get sober, nothing. And I thought what I was going to do was go down and talk to a counselor again, boo-hoo a little minute, blame it on her and this and that and that. Because my brother said, well, you're talking to that person. I'll go get a bottle and some fishing stuff. We'll go fishing and have a drink. It's perfect. And I don't know, there's a lot of old timers in here. You probably had this test. There was a 6'5" German lady. She's bigger than me. And she wasn't afraid of me. And she gave me these 20-question tests, and I took it. And she literally looked at me afterwards. She goes, Mr. Kilmer, you got 19 out of 20 things correct. And I got excited. I hadn't got an A on a test in a long time, right? And she said the only thing you didn't do was drink while pregnant, right? And I'm not judging if you did that, and it was possible, I would have probably have done it. And then the next thing she said is, do you mind staying here? I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I got something. It's like guys who complain about driving 20 minutes to a meeting. You've always sponsored guys like that, right? Oh, I can't do it. Orange County Housewives are on, or some crap, right? But when I got here, they do anything, right? And they forget. I sponsor guys like that in halfway houses. Thank God he gave me a place to live. I had nowhere to go after 90 days. Just rules suck. This is stupid. You know, all that stuff that goes on. And I said, well, I have to talk to my mom and get my stuff together. She goes, no, you don't have to. She says, all you have is a bag of clothes. She already dropped it off, right? And so I thought, okay, whatever. And I have no clue what's going on, anything. And I walk up. They go to show me my room. And I'm not the same guy I used to be, but I was kind of racist. I grew up in a racist family, and I had all these prejudgment things going on in my mind. And they take me down to this room. And if any of you guys know about sports, there was a black guy in the room, and he was about 6'8". He made me look small. He looked like Karl Malone, the mailman, if you ever know who that is. And he walked right up to me, and he goes, I'm so glad you're here. And he put out his hand. He goes, my name's Al, and I'm gay. I was like, right? So I turn around. I go right back up to the front. And I said, look, there seems to be a mistake. I'm in the wrong room. And the lady said, she looked at me and she goes, do you know where you are? I said, yeah, I'm in a treatment center in Naples, Florida. She goes, you know, you're in an insane asylum, and people whose lives that come by here don't stop by here to check the fuck in. That's what she told me. And she goes back to she goes, go back to your room. And she also told me the doors were locked, right? And I go back to that room, and to show you how wrong I was once again, I go in there, and that guy's on his knees praying. I hadn't prayed in so long. And the reason I didn't pray, because I knew I was a hypocrite. I pray and I never do anything. I knew I was I just felt guilty and shameful because I'd never followed through with anything. You know, you're going to have to do your part and take some actions. It doesn't work just by thinking. And the guy had a coin next to my bed and didn't know what that was. Saw my first 24-hour chip and a big book. And he signed it. And I thought, man, maybe I should try that prayer thing, right? And I looked over, he was still on his knees. And I said, nah, I better wait till he goes to sleep because I'm pretty good looking. Get on my knees, you know, he just told me this, right? I'm just kidding. But anyways, I woke up, and when I read that, it affected me. And I came out of there, and I didn't go to any outside meetings. I did what most people do. I sat in there, and I made excuses. I lied. Got a girlfriend, of course. She's dead. Actually, Scott and I were in there together. It was 60 people, and I think there's only 3 of us alive. And I know you can't scare an alcoholic. And then, to be funny, I remember him coming in. And, and the other reason I stayed, I told the guy, I said, look, I'm going to be kind to you. And I know my stepdad works here. All of a sudden, I got respectful, right? I said, you might want to call him and tell him that I'm going to break out if he doesn't get me out, right? And then there's ex-Dallas Cowboy cheerleader walked in. I said, never mind, I'll stay, right? So I stayed for the wrong reasons. It turned out to be the right reason. And just to show you how crazy we can be in our judgments, Scott sat across from me in that place. He didn't look like this. He was about 100 pounds lighter. Kind of looked like a pimp. He had hair coming out of his zip-up jumper. And I looked right at the guy. We never even had a conversation. I said, who the hell does this guy think he is? This guy is not going to make it. As if I'm any authority in there with like 6 days in an apron with my butt hanging out, right, and the doors are locked. And it's funny, later on we talked, and he said, I thought the same thing of you. Right? So what happened, fast forward a lot, I came out of that place, and when I was leaving, that 6'5" German lady said, she said, you just paid $30,000 for a big book. She says, if you don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous, you're going to die. That's what she told me. And I said, well, I got my tools now. I got this. And I came out of AA, and I did 342 meetings in 90 days. At 5 months, I came out of a blackout, drunk, with the gun to a guy's head, begging me not to kill him because he had children at home. And what happened was, I came into AA, and I got physically sober for a little bit. You know, we all do. You start feeling a little bit better, you get money in your pocket, you think you're cured. You know, I found my zipper. You know, you talk to these old timers and you tell them your best stuff, and they go home and read the doctor's opinion. I'd be like, did you guys listen? I just said I need a new car, a new job, and $5,000. I do not need to really read that doctor's opinion. Well, I got drunk. What happened was I got a job and I got a little bit of money. And all I did was go to meetings. And I'm the guy that the book describes. I'm a chronic alcoholic. And there's no steps on the wall in here, but if you're new and you look at those steps and they look like they're designed to punish you, welcome to AA. But they're not. They're designed to give you freedom. They really are. And I went out and got drunk, and what happened, a guy hit that new car, and I chased him down in Golden Gate Estates at 110 miles an hour. He got caught on a dead-end road. His window was down this much. I had a 12 gauge, and I hit his window and said, get out of the car, and the trigger went off. And honest to God, obviously didn't kill him. I was shooting the day before in the Everglades. I didn't know if the gun was loaded or not. I had no clue. And I really didn't want to hurt the guy. But that's how my life changes on a dime when I drink. I'm from here to there. The Dr. and Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the book talks about. I just wanted to give me money to fix my car. And at that moment, I didn't sober up, but I realized I could have just killed this guy. And I'm no different than the guys in jail. Seconds and inches and grace, right? And so I told the guy, just get out of here. Just go. And he was crying. He was older than me. He was a man. I was 23 years old. And I'm a lunatic, crazy. And I go home, and I did. I loaded that gun. And I sat at the edge of my bed, and I yelled, God, help me or give me the strength to kill myself. I can't do this anymore. And the next morning, a guy from AA knocked at my door. He wondered where I'd been, right? And he took me to a club, and I walked in that club, and there were some old-timers that were in there that were there before, and that club had only been open a couple days. And I walked in, there was a line of long tables, and there were some guys sitting at the end of it. And if you're new, I know you see these old-timers. It seems like they have the knack to piss you off. Whatever they say pisses you off, right? And I walk in that door, and I go, hey, boy, if you put AA first in your life, you may just get a life. You can quit bullshitting yourself about the life you think you had or one you think you got coming. The back of the hair of my neck stood up. But the difference was I didn't have a smart-ass comeback. I usually always had a smart-ass comeback, right? Because I'm hiding underneath me, right? And the other old guy at the table was, oh, you know, if they had told me to take one more drink, I'd have took two to make sure. And I got that. I knew exactly what that was like because that's where I felt at that moment. I just wanted to die. And then another guy said, kid, what I said to you earlier when I started, you don't have to feel this way again if you don't want to. And I wept because that's all I ever wanted. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I'm done. I know my life is over. And then he said, the next thing he's confused. He said, but kid, I don't give a damn how you feel. Right? I want to know what you're going to do about your recovery because feelings aren't facts. And thank God that's true because I milked my feelings and crappy emotions and excuses for years. Just like you meet guys in the AA, don't really do a real fourth fifth step. They're sober a long time and their lives are constantly angry and full of tension. Right? That's what they are. Well, you cannot live a double life and stay sober that long. It says that out of our experience. It says that. Just like we all read how it works. How many times it says, here are the steps which are suggested as a program of recovery. No steps, no recovery. That's what it means. And there's threats all over it. You skip this vital step, which means necessary to life. Old timers gave me a dictionary and told me to start looking stuff up because I always think I knew everything. Just like you get to this third step. It says, oh, it's a vital and crucial step. It has little or any permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face the things that have been blocking us. My sponsor said, this is only for people who want to live. He goes, you don't want to live, don't do it. That's what he told me. And I was deathly afraid at that time. And I was at that, you know, and you got to strike early before you get your ego back. And I looked at those steps, and I had this overwhelming warm feeling that I'm a guy that has to do those things. I do. And I picked a guy who I saw before who was a big book thumper, but very loving, you know, but he was tough too. And I knew I needed to ask that guy because I knew he could take me through the steps. And I did it mechanically at first. And I'll tell you, like in early sobriety, and you might not get this when you're new in sobriety too either, you don't miss what's going on around you. These are the best people and friends that you'll ever make in your life, right? Here I am 30 years later, getting asked to speak. When I was 120 days sober, my dad was murdered. First one at my house was my sponsor. The second one was Scott picking me up. We're both bozo new guys, right? Basically, but we stayed sober. And then another guy came and drove me all the way to North Carolina to see my dad's funeral. I had nothing. And the day before, I left that story up, but when I was 17, I went to find him because he was an abusive drunk, and I went to kill him. And I'll leave that out. But anyways, the night before, my sponsor came to tell me that my father was murdered. And I said, well, good. I didn't have to do it. And I cried. And then he told me to go home and do some readings. And I woke up the next morning when he called me after Scott took me out to dinner and drove out 120 miles an hour in his Mustang doing donuts. We should have went to jail. Sober. And but I got out of myself, right? And he called me and I said, you know, I wonder what it's like to have been beating your kids and abandon all your kids and not be able to stop drinking. And my sponsor says, you got to go to the funeral. That didn't come from you. Because I never thought like that. And I go, and I waited till everyone went out, and I went up and sat next to his coffin, and I said, look, I don't know if I forgive you, but I got honest for the first time. I said, I'm just like you. Right? I'm just like you. And I said, maybe you died so I don't have to. And that's really what I thought. And I got busy going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And at first, this sponsor, I told him my plan. You know how you got a plan? Your plans don't work, by the way, if you haven't figured it out yet. And I told him how I'm going to go back to school this time. I'm going to do all this stuff and my plan. And he goes, kid, who are you kidding? He goes, you're not going to stop drinking. And he says, you're going to fucking die of alcoholism. My first thought was, well, God, where's the AA love, right? I talked to therapists. They said I need positive affirmations. He didn't go to that class. And he got me busy. I got busy in the steps. We started going on 12-step calls. I went on a lot of 12-steps calls early in sobriety. I remember Scott and I meeting a guy in the back of the club. This guy, he had a case of beer there, and Scott said, look, pour it out. He goes, well, I ain't pouring that out. So we got back in the car to leave, and he chased us down the alley. And he goes, okay, you can take two for the ride. We dropped this guy off at Swaffus in Fort Myers. We go eat at Perkins. Alcoholics are extremely gifted. We come back to Naples, and as we're driving through Naples, the guy beat us back. He didn't have a car. He was sitting on the curb having a beer. So don't tell me alcoholics can't go to any length, because he did it. And what I'll tell you is I got mechanically into the steps, and I love this guy because I didn't have a place to live when I first got there. He passed away almost a year ago. And I'll tell you, that guy saved my life. I know a lot of people will say, oh, no, God did that and this. I'm telling you, if that guy wasn't there at that right time, and it wasn't him, because that guy let me stay at his house. I had nowhere to go. And I woke up one morning, and he has 3 daughters, and the house is full of kids, and I don't know what's going on. And I was scared to come out of that room. And I darted to the bathroom, and one of his children wrote on the mirror, Ray, you're worth it. I love you. I don't know these people. I don't know any of them. I'm like, I'm not even worth what they're writing on that wall, right? On that mirror. And this guy showed me Alcoholics Anonymous by his actions. He got me busy. I did a 4th and 5th step. And, I'll share this experience with you. I don't have much time, but if you're doing a 5th step, don't be afraid. And it may not be the same for everyone. I hear a lot of people, and they say, oh, I did a 5th step, and the 4th of July went off. Everything was wonderful and great. That's not what happened to me. It was the first time in my life I ever looked at someone told someone the whole truth, and I took an honest inventory. Because what happened to me when I came to that treatment center and got drunk going to just meetings was I told someone my life story. Because what I really want is you to feel sorry for me and to be on my side and justify. It's the same reason the big book says 19 words or less, tell me why. But I don't want to tell you 19 words. I want to tell you a whole bunch so Scott goes, that's right, Ray, you should have that resentment. Let's go get him, right? Because that's just how we think. And what it did do is the first time in my life, it set me up for 6 and 7 that I wanted to be something different more than anything in the world. I did not want to be that same person. And I found out I couldn't do it on my own. Because if you're like me, we had well-intentioned people in our life. And if you had people like me before A who loved you in spite of yourself, they all told you probably what they told me. Ray, if you just don't drink, the world's your oyster. You're going to be a great guy. They don't know I have alcoholism. Alcoholism starts where the bottle goes down, right? I become irritable, restless, and discontented. And those guys explained to me what that was in terms I could understand. They said being irritable is how you become acutely aware of what's wrong with all the people around you. I've always been good at that. You want your inventory taken, just ask me. I'll still do it. Restless, he said, you ever have a dog? And take it out to pee? It just keeps moving around. It can't find its spot. And everywhere I went, I could never find my spot. And he said the discontent side is where my mind always did what it did. You know, if I had the right job, the right amount of money, the right parents, the right car, I'd be fine. Well, after 2 weeks, I picked the wrong color car because I have alcoholism. Nothing satisfies that void. And that's why in the book says you can find God in the last analysis. Where is that? That's when all the money doesn't work anymore, the girls don't work anymore, your boyfriends don't work anymore, the cars don't work anymore. There's nothing left. And that's where I was. And I had to do something to save my life. And I worked the steps, I made my amends, and I did all those things. And I'm going to tell you 2 quick little stories and shut up. There's a lot more I'd like to say, but so don't think your life is over when you get to Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was arrested that last time, and I had those charges of felony battery police officer and attempted murder, I could have got a long time for that. And the cop was making fun of me in the car, and he's like, you're never getting a job now, kid, right? You're never going to do this, you're never going to do that. And I was about 9 years sober, maybe 8 years sober. I had the fortunate, I went on a big book cruise with Joe and Charlie, and they asked me to speak. And if you don't know who they are, look them up on YouTube. They really will change your life. And I gave a talk, and I got asked to be a deputy. And I sat with him, and he goes, Ray, it's really not a good job for an alcoholic. And he had told me, he remembered my story and my grandfather being a fireman. He goes, you're a real alcoholic. He goes, you need to go get a job that's going to help people. And he said, but you still got to go out to Alcoholics Anonymous and help people. And your job doesn't count because you get a paycheck. Right? That's what he told me. And he gave me some directions on some things to do. And along with my sponsor, I go do this. There's this physical test that has to happen within 10 minutes and 30 seconds. My ego and everyone in AA was like, oh, it'll be easy for you. Well, I get there and I do this thing, and you have to do the whole event in that time. I get to the almost last event, and I'm smoking it, and the guy breaks the machine. And the guy looked at me and goes, you got to start over. I'm like, what? Like, start over. And I was huffing and puffing. Back then, it was to see if you were mentally tough enough to get through it. That's really what it was. And I went right to do typical alcoholic. I called my sponsor, and I said, oh, you know what? Charlie was wrong. This isn't what I'm supposed to do. They're trying to screw me, this, that, and the other. And I was sponsoring a guy at that time who was in a wheelchair, and he's from a bad area in Everglades City in Florida. And he got shot outside of Houston. He goes, didn't he want to be a fireman? I said, yeah, he did. He says, get back in line and do it for him, asshole. So I get back in line, and the guy says, you go to fire school yet? I'm like, no. He goes, you go to EMT school? No. I said, I'm on the list. And he goes, well, I don't know what you're doing here. And I get in, I go in line, I get almost to the last event again, and I ain't got nothing left. I mean, literally, it's a 200-pound dummy, it's 110 degrees, and I just did this back to back. The first thing you do is 120 pounds on you, a Stairmaster, that's an escalator, for 4 straight minutes. And you think your legs work until you get off of it, right? And I get there, and the proctors aren't supposed to talk to you. And this guy looked at me and goes, hey, kid, would you leave me there if we were in a burning building? I'll tell you honest to God what my head said. Hell yeah, we both ain't dying, right? And I don't remember what. He goes, well, you got a minute, and you're not going to make it. And I looked up, I said a prayer, and I got over there, and I did this thing I couldn't see. I got done, and there was a female chief there, and she goes, you finished it with 2 seconds. My alcoholic ego, the first thing I said was, well, how embarrassing is that? Right? That's what I said. And then about a week later, I get a phone call. 2 guys out of 1,200 guys, I got an interview. And when I got in there with 9 gold badges, I was shaking and baking, and I was nervous as hell. One of the chiefs goes, wait a minute, aren't you the guy who did it twice? No one ever did it twice. So everything I think bad that's happened in my life has ended up being the best thing that's ever happened to me. And if you're in here today and you're ashamed of the worst thing that ever happened, you're going to help somebody one day with that. And it's going to change their lives. Because once you do the work, it doesn't do anything in here anymore. I can share the worst things that ever happened. Some people just get appalled at what I'll share. I don't care. If you beat your kids or whatever, you're welcome here. That stuff can be changed. And I'll end with this. I heard a guy when I was about 5 years sober, and you're going to go through phases in sobriety. You know, I was sober a little while, and I was still living that double life. I was married, cheating on her, doing all these things. Sponsored a bunch of guys, thinking I was a big shot, spewing my anger around meetings, talking down to people, thinking I know stuff. And I was really dying. I wasn't sober. And I heard this guy. He was sitting there, and he told a story about South Africa, and it seemed like the guy was alcoholic. Anyways, it's kind of not word for word. So there's this guy, and he seemed alcoholic, and his dad had about 100 acres of land, and his dad was dying. And it was at the same time that in Africa they were finding diamond mines. And this kid was irritable, restless, and discontented. He goes, this is all I got? He's going to give me this house that's paid for and his stupid property? Right? And he came up with a plan that when his dad dies, he's going to sell all the stuff, buy equipment, and go out in the bush and find diamonds and be rich. That's exactly what he did. His dad passed. 2 guys came, bought the property from him. He bought equipment. He went out in the bush and died alone and broke and never found 1 diamond. There's 2 guys that bought the property and went to move this rock in the backyard 100 yards from the back door of the house. That happens to be the Hope Diamond. Underneath it was the largest diamond manufacturer in the world till today. And his one brother said to the other one, he goes, hey, what are we going to call it? He goes, let's name after that poor sucker who died. Let's call it De Beers. That's not who owns De Beers. That guy died alone and broke because of that. And the moral of that story was for me, God always had for me 100 yards from my back door everything I ever wanted. Except I was too busy playing God, right? And that's why one of the delusions in the book that I've lived with the last 5 years, it says, the delusion we can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if we only manage well. And it says rest with a W, like wrestling, right? And I watched the guy at my job, and I've been doing it full of fear. He's like, you know, if I do this much overtime, and I do this, and I do this, and do this, I get to here, everything's going to be perfect. And I watched the guy just do it. 6 months, he retired. He was happier than hell. He got everything he wanted. He got there, and on my shift, he hung himself. I don't have a good plan. My plan is to show up here, follow directions, and I'll tell you what, I probably have a life today that I don't deserve. Thank you guys for letting me share.